So this video is going to be about paranoia and that feeling of like being watched. That's something I've probably struggled with over the last 12 years as a continual symptom, just kind of something that's always there. My experience with it actually has been that it's probably been the most concurrent symptom of my psychoses, because even if I'm sitting down in, well, seemingly a completely benign place, somewhere that wouldn't create much paranoia, I'm actually still thinking I'm part of something, I'm being watched, and if I grow those thoughts, it quite quickly goes into simulations and Truman Show delusions and all of this sort of stuff, and it kind of transpires into something, not great. But one of the main feelings of it is that I've always been, I think, quite sensitive to other people's gaze. And that means that when people look at me, if I don't know, especially if I don't know the people, so say maybe I'm going to a Tesco's and I'm walking into that Tesco's and a few people look at me, I'm always really sensitive to that gaze. It sort of just trips me out, spins me out a little bit, especially if people maintain a look at me, or maybe, I'm doing something that they find interesting, like clearing out something from a car or trying to fit something in the back of the car. The gazes always kind of spin me out. And for years, I didn't really understand what that was until I started understanding more about human behavior. And the problem is that not understanding why people might be looking at me without some form of understanding that fits into a framework of reality, I think, especially if you've had bad past experiences, can be a trigger to the nervous system being activated for anticipation of threat. At least that's what I've figured out for myself. And so when people look at you, it's quite a scary thing, right? Because we're not in a culture effectively that's a unified culture anymore. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing and belonging in their own places and thinking God knows what in their minds, which means that when someone looks at you, this might sound a little bit extra or a little bit kind of, hyperbolic, but you don't know what's looking at you, do you? Like when a random person looks at you, it's like, what the fuck is looking at me? Is this a person who is well put together and, maintains a healthy amount of thoughts? Or is that literally someone ready to victimize and abuse, And so human eyes, although there's like a soul and they're amazing things and beautiful to look into as their own universe, they're also one of the most horrifying and voidless, voidful things, because anything could be behind a set of eyes. And so I feel like that's what I was tapping into when people would look at me. I'd had bad experiences in the past with people, and it had built into my nervous system that attention was some form of threat. And you could even make the argument that being sensitive to people's gaze is something and that creates paranoia and acts as the foundation for developments into paranoid thinking, which can contribute to delusions. But you might say that this happens to a lot of people that have rough childhoods, and the rough childhoods eventually lead to these nervous system like reflexes and reactions to people's gazes that then creates a foundation for paranoia, which transpires into delusional thinking. One of the ways that I overcame my paranoia of other people's gaze was to try to create not hostility, but anger. It's kind of strange, isn't it, that people need to constantly check other people out. And I would go, okay, that's just a unadjusted person. That's a misadjusted person. There's no need for this, especially when they look and they don't smile. And it's not a greeting. It's not like a nice, warm present. It's especially if they've already got a scowl on their face and it's like this. And it's like, I know there's thoughts behind there that you've not resolved, and there's either something about me that's triggering those thoughts you've not resolved, or you're a disorganized person. And that's what I tell myself. And I allow myself to get angry and always put a middle finger up in my mind and be like, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? Like, just fuck off. And then allow that to kind of remove that presence in the mind, so that my reticular activating system, the part of your brain that learns to filter out information or things, will allow those people to fade, and that works really well. I then get scared because I'm in a bubble where I don't care about what anyone's looking at me. You know, I don't care so much that anyone's looking at me, that I can just kind of do things, and I'll find myself doing really weird things in public and be like, oh shit, okay, that's now a second layer to this thing that I need to resolve. For removing the fear of being watched, I now need to worry about actually doing strange things in the absence of fear of being watched, because fear is a good regulating factor, right? You know, the fear, so having to incorporate some form of structure into my behaviors is interesting. And again, if you haven't seen my other videos, because I've suffered with effectively a reality disorder, for me, knowing what's real and what's not real and being able to piece together those elements is quite difficult. So for me, I find my mind can wander very easily because it's effectively been either genetically predisposed to doing that, or genetically modified for epigenetics in my childhood and early adulthood to learn how to do that. But yeah, effectively, that's how I get rid of the fear of people looking at me, which helps wonders with my delusions, because most of my delusions, as I've been realizing over the years, and if you're interested in this stuff, I'll be writing a book about how I overcame schizophrenia, psychoses. Most of those symptoms were on a foundation of paranoia, and so removing that base level fear of people looking at me, gazing at me, and being worried about what others' intentions are, and that allows me to, in some sense, restore some peace, which reduces stress, and stress being a trigger of the psychoses removes that trigger. And so that's effectively where I'm going with that, is like trying to reduce stress as much as possible by engineering my perception of reality in a way which removes fear as much as possible. What else should I say? Because I'm sure there's something interesting about that. But yeah, really, I think it all boils down to, and though this might be a short video, I'm sure I've ordered it properly, I suppose. But as much as we don't recognize that a unifying substrata of reality is important, it is for a majority of reasons. And one of them is knowing what people think about you. You know, when you're in a community and everybody knows everybody, you might think, okay, well, if someone's gossiping about me, I'll hear that because someone will tell me that they're saying that. And so when you look at people in the eyes in that community, you're like, okay, no, they like me. You know, there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to fear. Everyone knows what's going on within this community. And there is some assurance that constrains the unknown, you know. But when you look people in the eyes nowadays, you almost want to avoid it, right? Because you don't know what's behind those eyes anymore, because the communities now have broken down. I think it's very rare to find anywhere in the world that has solidified communities still. I think they're a rarity nowadays. And so you don't even want to look people in the eyes because you don't know what's behind there. You don't know the level of threat behind the eyes. And so you have to kind of proceed with caution everywhere. And I observe just people, you know, sitting in maybe rougher neighborhoods, because I've always lived in rough neighborhoods. And there's always, the head is, you probably heard the saying, head on a swivel. The head is always on a swivel. Now, if you look at primates, when they're in unfamiliar environments, what are they doing? They're scanning constantly. And so I feel like the natural predicate for our environment is we need to be on the lookout for threats. And that is just a complete, in my opinion, failure of everyone at the social level, from the leaders down to the very people that make up the fabric of society. It's just a complete failure, because we shouldn't be sitting in our own communities having to worry about threat. At every level there is a failure there. It's a failure of everybody to report and to properly maintain social order at the bottom, right? And then it's an inability for people at the top to provide stable environments where people that have all these crazy ideas and mental ways of thinking aren't commonplace, you know? And again, I think that the consequence that I'm talking about there is a result from the breakdown of a community, or any form of community, any form of unification through thinking and believing and talking. And so I hope that makes sense. But if you struggle with it, paranoia and feeling threatened when people look at you, because I know it's a very real feeling and I've heard other people talk about it, you just have to remind yourself that people are chaotic today. There is no unity, there's no order, and there is no communion. And so in light of that, don't care what people think. Do what you can to the best of your ability and fuck them. Because until we've got that form of unification, until everyone's singing the same song and saying, yep, this is where we're going, and this is why, and there's a spirit behind it, then why would you be concerned about what other people think? See what I mean? Why would I have to worry about what Joe Blogs? Obviously, I care for people and I have empathy. I don't want to hurt anyone. But at the same time, why would I care about someone walking down there where if a gunman comes running down the road, that person is just going to run in the other direction and has no self-sacrifice towards me, you see? But if you were in a community where everyone was like, okay, no, we're going to protect each other, we're going to self-sacrifice for each other, then maybe you want to care about what those people think. And I don't think it's not an uncommon theme, right? Because what do people say all the time these days? I don't care what people think, I don't care what people think. And it's like, okay, well, that no problem in that. I'm saying the same thing, but we all have to acknowledge that when we're all saying that and we refuse to come down into some form of communion, some form of shared idea or goal, that yeah, everyone's going to think I don't care. Because be honest, no one really has your back. Your family's got your back. Yeah, lucky to have family, but people won't have your back because there's no shared ideal. And when there's no shared ideal, it means that the needs and wants of the individual are the highest value to them. And so if they know that they can be satiated by a desire or greed or lust the next day, why should they put in self-sacrificial effort to you, which might jeopardize that future of self-satiation that they have? And it sounds like I've really gone on a tangent there, but you really need to reinforce that idea into your head and work towards some form of unity, because otherwise you're just going to be so sensitive to what other people are, the signals they're sending off, right? And so, yeah, that's how I got over it anyway, as I really realized, unless these people are on the same page as me and we're going to work together, then I'm not going to worry what the fuck they're thinking, because it doesn't do me any benefit. In fact, it destroys me at a very fundamental level. And so you might think of it that I was building up an armor in order to withstand the chaos that's going on in this world at the moment. But anyway, that was Paranoia being watched. I just wanted to make a short video on that, and in the future I'll make lots more and flesh all these videos out. So bye for now.